Hello, Bernard, also an old friend of AAVEA and IAPA. Hi, Bernard, there you are. Lovely to
Hi,
see you.
very good to see you.
And someone pointed out to me, fresh flowers behind you is your token. So that's great to see. Now, Bernard is someone I follow very avidly on Twitter. You were voted as one of the top influencers and with helping out and what's the word for it? Campaigning and advocating around attractions and the COVID pandemic. So congratulations for that. That was an amazing, well-deserved recognition of all that you've done. Bernard is the executive director of the Association of Leading Visitor Attractions in the UK. And over to you, Bernard. Thank you so much again for gifting your time to us.
No, my pleasure. Good afternoon from reasonably sunny London, and thank you very much for the invitation to come back and join you. It's a real pleasure. So I'm going to talk about No Longer at Home: Why Attractions Are the New Social Spaces, and I want to share with you 10 things that we've learned here in the United Kingdom over the course of the last 18 months. What's worked, what hasn't worked, what we think is going to be new behaviours in the future. So just a bit of context for me quickly. This is who I am. I'm the Mayor of London's Cultural Tourism Ambassador. So tourism is extraordinarily important as an industry here in London. And just as Jacob was saying, one of the biggest crises that we have in tourism in London is recruitment. So the lack of people going into hospitality sector. And I chair the London Tourism Recovery Board, which is getting London back up and running. So we're focusing on the domestic market like everybody else at the moment, but we're just waiting to explicitly invite the world to come back to London and the United Kingdom when they're ready to do so. I chair a theatre, Bristol Old Vic Theatre. That's the oldest still operating theatre in the English-speaking world. London's Theatre Festival, and I chair the People's History Museum in Manchester, and I'm a board member of the St. Paul's Cathedral. So I'm involved actively in lots of very different types of visitor attractions. So that my experience of those over the course of the last 18 months or so is going to inform what I'm going to be saying now. But the other reason that I accepted the invitation is because I love South Africa. This is me on my last visit, jumping off the Lion's Head in Cape Town, with the stadium in the background, and also wearing an RNLI South African jumper. So that's just to prove my love of the country and my appreciation for the invitation. I'm going to start with this slide. Now, for those of you, I don't expect you to remember this, but this was my final slide in my presentation last year. And I'm deliberately starting with it again now because it's still really, really important. So this is what I called the visitor attraction trilemma, not a dilemma, but a trilemma. And it's all about achieving the balance of these three things in order to achieve wise growth. So value is money coming in, people paying for tickets. Volume, visitor numbers, and the visitor experience is self-explanatory. And as you all know, you can increase your value, you can increase your prices, but that may necessarily mean that you get fewer people, but they're spending more. Or you could reduce your income coming in and more people come in, but that actually has a detrimental effect on your visitor experience. And it's something that we saw at St. Paul's Cathedral a number of years ago, where actually the more people who were coming in, the less good the visitor experience was because it was just so crowded. So you just need to keep on balancing these three things, particularly as we recover and we reopen and we build up and repair our balance sheets. One of the things that has been really important beyond the last 18 months is that every year we at AAVEA, Association of Leading Visitor Attractions in the UK, we publish all of our members' visitor numbers for the preceding calendar year. So we did that in March of this year, and of course it was a dreadful press release because I think it was about something like 70% fall in visitor numbers across our visitor attractions. But in normal years, and we've been doing this survey for a long time, one of the things that I've done is to look back at which visitor attractions, whether it's a theme park or a cathedral, an art gallery, a museum or a zoo or whatever, those attractions that are sustainably growing their visitor numbers and diversifying their audiences, do they share common behaviors? Do they share a kind of common DNA or common practices? And of course, the answer is absolutely yes. And this is what they are. They are provocative. They are prepared to not do the usual things. They're prepared to cause a fuss. They're prepared to not behave as normal. They're disruptive. They take risks, considered risks, but risks nevertheless. They stretch their brand. They foster creative partnerships with unusual suspects. Really fascinating one, this one. It's easy for museums to work with museums and art galleries to work with art galleries, but actually throw a theatre company in the mix or food and drink. So, for example, at Bristol Old Vic Theatre, where I'm chairman, one of the things that we've just done very recently is that we've ended our contract with our food and beverage supplier. And for about 9 months, we're going to be choosing a different local restaurant in Bristol to come in to be our food and beverage supplier for that month. And then we'll have another one, and then we'll have a different one. So what that means already, we've seen it already, is people are being drawn into these sort of pop-up restaurant experiences because it's new and it's novel and it's quirky. So they're coming in to experience some of their favorite restaurants in the theatre and then go on to have a theatre show. The other thing that it's really important is that it shows us that we're a showcase, we're an ambassador for the best things in the local community, and it's really helping our outreach and community reputation too. So fostering creative partnerships with people who are not like you. And then finally, developing your audiences, and I'll come back to that in a second. So what are the 10 things that we've learned about visitor attractions over the course of the last 18 months? And these are very UK specific, but I suspect that some of them are really going to resonate with you in South Africa. The first is, and I know this to be true in South Africa, politicians usually only understand and appreciate tourism, visitor attractions and culture at times of crisis. The rest of the time, they think we're just a sort of permanent, ongoing, relatively low maintenance, nice to have industry. But they don't really appreciate how important we are and how important we are to local and regional and national economies until there's a crisis. And in particular, we're not just important in economic terms, though we are really significant, but also in terms of health and well-being and lives. One of the things that we've been able to do here in the UK is because we've been drawing on lots and lots of data and evidence. Something that I talked about at this conference last year is all of our members in AAVEA share their insights and their data and their average transaction values and all of those kind of things really openly within AAVEA in order to improve the performance of everybody and to improve the visitor experience for everybody too. What that's also meant is that I've got a lot of data. So that's enabled me to go into government meetings with our Treasury Department, our Finance Ministry, with our Tourism Ministry, our Health and Economic and other ministries, really to make a really strong claim to support the tourism industry. And so one of the things I was really proud of last year is that we got £1.57 billion from the UK Exchequer, from the Finance Ministry, to support the cultural sector here in the UK, because they were really vulnerable, because they weren't able to open, as is the case in South Africa and lots of other countries around the world. And we were only able to do that because our tourism industry shares lots of insight and data really openly, so we came with really good arguments and evidence to make those cases. The second, and this is actually a brilliant example today, is that I know exactly in South Africa, as has been in the case in the UK, there's been an inspiring explosion of sharing and collaboration within the sector and beyond, including internationally. And you can probably see over on the left-hand side, that's a screenshot that I took of doing the presentation tomorrow last year for this conference. I really hope that the explosion of collaboration and sharing and insights and support that we've seen, which has been so beneficial in the last 18 months, will continue, because everybody has really benefited from that. It would be dreadful just to go back to business as normal as it was 19, 20 months ago. The third is something that's really important to me, and I know will be important to you as well, is that the third thing has been the last 18 months have really shown us the absolute importance of front of house staff. They've always had an incredibly important role to welcome and to reassure and to explain and to manage people and to manage queues, but also now to protect their health. So that first person that you see as you walk into a museum or a gallery or a theme park or a zoo or whatever it is, they're the people who you place your trust in for very often the first time that you're leaving your house to go somewhere other than the shops. So their role now to manage social distancing or face mask use and the health and well-being of visitors, let alone staff, has never been more crucial. And one of my favorite facts is this. So a few years ago at AAVEA, I got the chief executive of Airbnb UK to come to speak to our conference. And he was fascinating. And one of the things that he said was that when Airbnb were putting together their business plan, their business model, one of the things that they looked at was TripAdvisor. Now, you know that the most reviewed thing on TripAdvisor isn't hotels, it's not restaurants, it's visitor attractions. And they said this was fascinating for them. So one of the things that they identified was the biggest difference between a 4-star TripAdvisor review, very good, and a 5-star TripAdvisor review, excellent, is that a 5-star review is 4 times more likely to mention a staff member's name. Now, HR directors love this, but it's so useful to have this evidence about the importance of front of house staff here in the attractions sector. So if there's anything that you take away from this afternoon, it is the difference between a very good visitor experience and an excellent one is you and your colleagues, whether they're volunteers or paid staff. The difference between very good and excellent is people. Fourth thing that we've learnt over the course of the last year is the explosion in digital. So when the world went into lockdown in February, March of last year, loads of visitor attractions swapped their physical accessibility to digital accessibility. So while they were physically closed, they were digitally open 24 hours a day. And there have been loads and loads of things that have been fascinating coming out of these. An explosion in online guided tours, online shopping, behind the scenes tours of museums and galleries and theatres, streamlined broadcasts from theatres. All of those kind of things have been absolutely fascinating. And it's given free rein to visitor attractions to do things digitally in a way that they would never have risked doing in normal times, and to take risks and just to try stuff and to see what would happen. But the other thing that's been really fascinating is that whilst digital is brilliant at being able to entice and excite and entertain and invite the visitor, it doesn't actually replace the visitor experience. It enhances all of those things, but it doesn't ultimately replace the visitor experience. And the other really fascinating thing about digital is that those people who have been traditionally cautious or hesitant about physically crossing your threshold and coming to see you for whatever reason, it may be price, it may be culture, it may be that they don't think that they're going to see things that reflect them or see even people who look like them there, actually crossing that digital threshold and looking around the museum or art gallery or theatre or whatever, or cathedral, has enabled them to think, actually, I will go back when they're physically open. So we've got really good data that digital has been a way of allowing people to experience your site virtually and build up the confidence to come and visit you physically when you're open. Fifth, and I'm sure this is true for you as it is here in the UK, let's just accept that what we did in the past wasn't perfect. So why on earth do we want to rush and go back and replicate it? We must recover better. If your ambition as a business is to go back to how you were running your business in 2019, I think you've kind of missed the plot, because the world has changed, and the world has now, the last 18 months has given us the license, the opportunity to do things differently and to do things better. Be open to innovation and risk-taking, try new things, be open to new partnerships, be critically honest about who visits you, who doesn't and hasn't in the past, and why they haven't. And finally, and I'm speaking here as a double vaccinated person, our vaccine rollout here in the UK has been really speedy and phenomenal. We've got about 76% of the UK population who've received both vaccines, both injections rather. But until there's a universally accessible vaccine, there will be no such thing as a post-COVID world. It doesn't exist. And we will have to adapt and to learn to manage and live with it like a chronic condition. So there's no such thing as a post-COVID world. COVID will always be with us to a certain extent, while we still have a lack of universally accessible vaccines. So we're just going to have to adapt and recover different and better. Something I've just touched on, actually, this is an opportunity to open our doors to people who are different from those we closed them to in 2020. Again, if your customer base coming through your doors when you reopen is exactly the same customer base who came to your doors in January or February of last year, we haven't taken advantage of the opportunity to do things differently and to do things better, and to genuinely be accessible to all parts of the community. So let's use the chaos, the license, the opportunity, the permission to do things differently that the last 18 months has given us, to look critically honestly at who comes and who doesn't. 7, this is absolutely something that has been incredibly emotionally fascinating and reassuring, that when people were able to come back to visitor attractions, they came back and it was a really emotional experience for them. They yearned to come back to their favorite places, which had really strong emotional resonance for them. And here in the UK, all of this sounds counterintuitive, but bear with me. We saw a significant growth in memberships during lockdown. So people taking out memberships of museums and galleries and zoos and the National Trust, even when they couldn't use them. We did a survey of all of our members, and again, everything from St. Paul's Cathedral to London Zoo and Titanic Belfast to Harry Potter. The average membership retention rate amongst AAVEA members was 82%. So 82% of members kept up their membership of these organizations, even when they couldn't use them. Because one of the things that we found, again, through AAVEA members, is that if you're a member of a museum, a cathedral, an art gallery, a zoo, or whatever it is, a wildlife organization, you initially join for transactional benefits, discounts, jumping the queue, free parking, membership offers. But if you're still a member after 3.5 years, and this is true of all of the diverse kind of attractions, doesn't matter whether you're a zoo or an art gallery, if you're still a member after 3.5 years, your motivation for being a member has completely changed. And it's because you're emotionally and intellectually connected with the organization and want to feel part of the family. You want to feel that you're part of the team. So that 82% in one way doesn't surprise me at all, because those are people for whom actually they want to show their support and love for the visitor attraction. They don't just need the discount. We saw a huge growth in volunteering and unprompted giving. We made up a fundraising slogan here in the UK to particularly support our zoos, which is, you can't furlough a penguin. They still need feeding, and so do all the other animals at the zoo. So we saw a lot of unprompted giving by the members of the public to their favorite places. I mean, absolutely phenomenal fundraising campaigns and case studies. And we also saw a significant increase when people did come back to visitor attractions in retail and food and beverage, and in particular food and beverage, because people wanted to eat. food that someone other than them had made, because they were kind of sick of their own cooking, having been in lockdown. So they wanted to taste other people's food. Retail. Now, this is very UK specific, but bear with me for a second. I did a survey in December of last year, so December 2020, of all of our members, and practically all of them have got online shops, whether it's London Transport Museum or Harry Potter or a zoo. And we asked them, what were the most popular things that members of the public bought from your online shops during lockdown? And it was this list. Jigsaws just went way crazy. Huge increase in jigsaws. Gardening tools and seeds, no particular surprise. Cake making and baking, cookbooks, family board games. Now, these are the kind of old school board games, so nothing with batteries, nothing with a plug. This is kind of Scrabble and Cluedo and Monopoly and, those kind of things. Local history books, because people under lockdown, going for their one permitted walk per day, suddenly realized actually they didn't really know where they lived. And they weren't familiar with the community, and they didn't really know their community's history. And so local history books was a really big seller. Ancestry kits. So if the future is unpredictable and scary and certain, I want to work out where I came from, because the past is factual and definite and nostalgic and comfortable. So really interesting. And ancestry is a bit like sort of genealogical tourism. You want to work out where you come from. So that was huge. Animal adoptions, obviously, you can't follow a penguin. And then lastly, if you've gone through all of that list, cocktail shakers and makers, possibly on a Friday evening, if it's really bad, a Tuesday morning. But all of this tells me that these are kind of unsophisticated, old school, fun. This isn't kind of technological stuff. Amazon and Netflix, they did all of that, sure, but this was old school stuff. So families getting together to make memories and to share experiences. And one of the things that we've seen here in the UK is that there's been a real desire on the part of the public to go back to places that are really emotionally resonant to them and deliberately have shared experiences with their loved ones, their friends and family, and to deliberately go out and make memories together. So I predict that we're going to see in the next few years an explosion in the experience economy. No more passively walking past stuff, but really getting engaged, as Jakob was saying earlier on. I want to give you, again, a very UK example, so forgive me, but it kind of underlines the point that I'm making, the explosion in the experience economy. So under lockdown and over the course of the last year, people have really taken a look at their lives and thought, actually, the things that are really important to me are my friends and family and just togetherness and sharing social spaces together that we potentially taken for granted. Hence, people really rushing to go back to places when they were reopened. And a good example of this is a TV program. And here in the UK, we've got a TV program on our main channel, BBC One, called The Repair Shop. And in fact, it was on last night. And the repair shop is really, it's very sweet and very emotional. Basically, people bring in their old stuff, none of which has particular value, but it's all about memories. So it's last night on the TV program, it was about a man bringing his grandfather's watch, and another person brought in a piece of art that their mother had worked. Another man brought in an accordion, which his father played in the 1940s and 1950s. So this is low-key stuff, and they want it repaired and brought back to life because it's not necessarily of financial value. And in fact, nobody talks about what these things are financially worth, because the real worth is in storytelling and emotions. And that really emotional connection with people who've left us and who've gone and our past. So I think that this is another really good example of the explosion in the experience economy, really valuing memory making and experiences. And I think attractions are brilliantly placed to capitalize on that. one of my mantras over the course of the last 18 months, and it was something that Jakob kind of mentioned as well, is sanitize your site, not the visitor experience. People, when they come back to your place, obviously want you to do the right thing in terms of COVID secure and personal protection equipment and face masks and social distancing and all of those kind of things, but not to the point of clinical efficiency. So sanitize your site, of course, but don't rob your visitor experience of joy and fun and entertainment and whimsy, because people have been longing to come back to you to enjoy all of those things, and they don't want to be deprived of that. And then last, this is a bit emotional. It's a bit romantic, but I don't apologize for that. You, literally people on this call, literally people in this conference, you create the backdrop for people's happiest memories. What a fantastic responsibility, but also what an amazing privilege. And particularly over the last 18 months, where we've seen visitor attractions really, really financially vulnerable, when they have reopened, something extraordinary has happened. Attractions are being recognized and used as social spaces where you can breathe and heal and reunite with friends and family. And one of the oddest but delightful things for me over the course of the last 18 months is that our sector has never been better appreciated for all of those things after never having been more vulnerable because of the lack of income. And I am by nature an optimistic person, and I think that we should all take huge heart from these points, that people are coming back to visitor attractions to mend and to repair, and in doing so, help you mend and repair your finances and your balance sheet. We're not out of the woods yet, and there are challenges to come, and Jakob mentioned a couple of them. But one of them is really fascinating, and I'm not sure that we could have predicted it, but museums and cultural spaces and galleries and cathedrals here in the UK certainly are taking on the role of being safe places to have difficult conversations. They're seen as neutral, they're not neutral, but particularly in the context of things like Black Lives Matters and discussions about power and equity and injustice, these places are being seen as places that can enable people to come together and have conversations. Easing social distancing and face mask use is not popular with a majority of visitors. We had a piece of research that we published yesterday via a webinar, still saying that only 27% of people in the UK are content that social distancing and face mask use no longer needs to happen. The vast majority want to see those things still in place in society at large, but specifically at visitor attractions. And we issued guidance to all of our members saying, actually be led by your visitors. Go at their pace. Don't just lift restrictions because bluntly Boris Johnson says you can, but be led by your visitors as to what they find most comfortable. Both with South African inbound tourism and UK inbound tourism, we know that overseas visitors won't be back in meaningful numbers until next year. And therefore tourism, both in South Africa and in the UK, and indeed everywhere else, will suffer what I'm calling a long COVID. Tourism was the first to be hit, the hardest to be hit, and will take the longest to recover. And all of that data and lobbying that we've been doing with government is resting on that premise, that we still require support in order to repair our balance sheets and to recover better and more sustainably. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come back. Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. Do follow me or Alva on Twitter. And in the meantime, I'm going to hand back to the hosts and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Gosh, Bernard, I feel like you've both summarized the day and posed some challenges. As always, you are so insightful. You've got such a great overview of what's happening. Thank you so much for that. Two things struck me. One was the roaring 20s. There'll be an explosion in the tourism economy. And, you know, this concept of the tourism is the long COVID. I totally agree with you there. I think it's exactly what we're feeling. And it goes back to the very first session today when I released the views that the attraction managers in South Africa have about recovery, where we had 22% feeling they will get 2019 numbers this summer, and 27% saying attractions industry has fundamentally changed and won't be the same again. So you've got this massive difference of opinion. But this long COVID ideas, I think, is a great way of explaining the duality and the muddiness of where we are at the moment. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Tanyuka, was there anything?
Sure, so much. But I think that what ultimately resonated for me is something that I can definitely relate to in my role and in the business that we're in, of creating an inspiring neighborhood at the V&A waterfront. What we've learned is people just need to reconnect. It's like an inherent, like human need to reconnect, to heal, and they can see right through brands that are exploitative. Is that the term?
Yeah.
Who are trying to sell and sell, versus brands that are often purpose-driven and empathetic and compassionate and human-centric. So I really love that. I got emotional, and I'm so glad that you landed there, because that's actually what it's all about. The human beings.
Yeah,
loved it.
Bernard, you managed to keep 100% of our people online at the very last session of day, but they are so tired there's no questions. You've probably answered them all. Thank you again. I know you're a huge personal fan of Cape Town. You often come here in December. I see it on your Twitter account, and when you do, we'll send you some cases of wine and we'll give you a safe hug when that can happen again. So thank you so much for that.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, over the years, you should know that I've spent so much money in the V&A waterfront. I feel like I partly own you.
Come back. You are a shareholder. Come back. We need you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Love it.
See you soon. Thank
Cheers,
you.
Bernard.
Right.
Gosh.
My word. I don't know. I feel like just as the day was winding down, the last two presenters with their challenges made me sit up and take notes all over again. And I can't say I'm left with more questions, but the cautions that there is no real clarity yet. And I think we need to be careful. We're so wanting certainty after a year of such uncertainty that we've got to be careful we don't jump into it too quickly. So
surrender and release.
That's right.
And stay connected.
And breathe. Okay, cool. So really it's wrap-up time, I think.
It is wrap-up time. And we have a poll that will take us all the way to the end of the session.
But before the poll, can I thank our sponsors one last time?
Please do. Absolutely should.
So, thank you. First of all, to South African Tourism. Without them and their partnership of AAVEA, we wouldn't have been able to do the survey. We wouldn't have been able to hold this conference. So, that's a big shout out to the South African Tourism team. Then to our premium partner for the conference, the Graskorp Gorge Lift Company. Then to our virtual partners for the conference. It's AAVEA, it's Table Mountain Cableway, it's the V&A Waterfront, your team, Tanika. And then session partners was Robben Island Museum, BDO, Semantics, and Web Tickets. Again, without your help, it couldn't be done. The conference does cost money to produce, especially in this amazing studio that we've got. And I can tell you now that the 1,000 Rand membership fees don't cover it. So without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and without you who are joining us, everyone who joined us for this conference, we definitely wouldn't be able to pull this off. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the crew.
The crew. There's a lot of people here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
all
6,
of us
7,
social
8, 9,
distancing.
10 that I can see.
Complete pros, professionals. As always, this was so slickly done.
Especially for us.
I mean, we had the easiest job. So I just want to say a big, big thank you to everyone involved in pulling this off. So on that note, shall we do a poll, the very last one of the day? Let's go.
We'll do the poll, we'll read the results, and then we're just going to bow out gracefully from there and see you next year. Enjoy your post-conference socializing glass of wine on your own with your partner. Right, the final poll.
So let's do this. The poll is, it's been a full day. Thanks for joining us. what next? And your options are, Aina, I was working all day. I'll have to watch some of the sessions on Catch Up channel. Sure, so much info. I will need to review all my notes. Yebo, yes, sign me up for everything AAVEA related. You are brilliant. Give us some love, guys. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay, that was quick. So, I mean, the poll results, they're in. That's good. So you say, Yebo, yes, sign me up for everything AAVEA related. You are brilliant. And how can everyone get hold of all the amazing content that you've seen?
So yes, it's all available on the Catch Up channel on this app. So you can watch it for free for the next 6 months. I'm particularly impressed, and maybe we need to take a picture of that poll. Nobody was working all day, because usually that's the big thing, is one actually does not concentrate in these virtual. So yeah, it is available for 6 more months. I know I need to go back to some of them and make some notes.
Me too.
But really, it's time to say goodbye.
It's time to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, crew. Thank you, team. Thank you, all of you. Thanks so much. It's been a great session. And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Goodbye.